you brought up TikTok. What is really going on with TikTok? What should we ban it? Is it a Chinese spy device? Like, how should we be thinking about that?
No, the campaign against TikTok is 98% bullshit. We definitely should not ban it. It would be a massive violation of the First Amendment. The government has no business doing that. The Supreme Court should have never allowed it. I mean, the Supreme Court's so out of control. Like, that's another soapbox, another conversation. I think the Supreme Court has ruined this country. And you'll be surprised if you're right wing to hear me say it's the activist judges that ruined this country. And so, but what you don't realize is that they're activists on behalf of corporations, and they've given them every advantage and the average American no advantage. So it drives me crazy. Anyway, when it comes to TikTok, they say, oh, we're worried that the Chinese government can get our private information. So we're not worried that Zuckerberg can get our private information because he has the same exact access from Meta and, Instagram, Facebook. So we're not worried that Elon can have our information. He has the same access as TikTok does on X, right? So wait, are we worried about the private information being in the hands of X, Y, or Z? Or are we not worried about it? No, that's not what this is about. There's a couple of the real reasons for the TikTok ban. Number one, and this is not speculation and it's not a conspiracy theory, Mitt Romney told Anthony Blinken, and Anthony Blinken agreed. It's on tape, and we've shown it several times on the Young Turks. He said, the Israelis used to be really good at PR. I don't know what happened. And now they're losing the PR battle. So that's why we got to go after TikTok. And I was like, I can't believe he just said it. Okay, so... And the ADL put out a statement saying there's all these things that are pro-Palestinian and only the small amount that are pro-Israel. So TikTok's a real problem. No, brother, that's not a problem. The problem is that Israel's slaughtering the Palestinians and people are upset about it and they're making normal videos and they're showing it. The problem is that you can't control the message anymore and it's driving you freaking crazy. So the real country that has a much larger factor in TikTok is not China, it's Israel. So, and you have to remember, Netanyahu is a war criminal despised by the whole world and deeply unpopular everywhere, including in Israel. And our, 80% of our politicians give him standing ovation after standing ovation. Why? AIPAC poured in hundreds of millions of dollars to buy our Congress. Washington is occupied territory. They're not going after TikTok because of China. They're going after TikTok because of Israel. But that's not the only reason. Secondly, and Scott Galloway made this point, I got it from him, and I think it was a real brilliant point. I hadn't thought of it before. There's a huge regulatory overhang over TikTok, meaning that its price is artificially depressed by about 25%. But you could agree or disagree on the percentage, but you get it. Why? Because the government is constantly threatening to ban it. Once that regulatory overhang is lifted, it's going to go up about 25% in value. That is at a bare minimum $10 billion, at a bare minimum, right? So at the minute an American corporation or a wealthy American buys it, they make $10, $20 billion overnight. So every American corporation, which again, Washington's occupied territory, they're owned by corporations. Every corporation is saying, oh yeah, China's a real national security threat. Hey, you guys all do business with China. Shh. You guys all sell cars and all this stuff and you import stuff. Well, if it's such a national security threat, why are you doing business with them? Shh. No. They got to sell it. Who should they sell it to? Me. Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's a giant scam for some corporation or wealthy person in America to make an unbelievable amount of money. Plus, it helps Israel to ban TikTok. So that's the real reasons.
Now, let's say that it was an Israeli-owned company and they were pumping in pro-Israel content. Would it make sense to you then to say, hey, this is a foreign national that owns this. We think they're using it to manipulate our youth. Would you then agree like, yo, we've got to get this out of foreign ownership?
Wow, what a wild hypothetical where American media companies might be working on behalf of Israel. I just can't wrap my head around it. That's every other media company in the country. It's not because they're owned by Israel. It's the groupthink again. Israel is our beloved special ally, blah, 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 blah. That's why shut up and give me your money. I got to send it over to Israel. Okay. And we've been doing that. And we've now sent $300 billion to Israel. Jesus Christ. When is it enough? So I don't want people to go down a dark path and blame religion or anything like that and get into conspiracy theories. It's just simple logic. If you allow for complete bribery, you're going to have complete bribery. And what I'm amazed that other knucklehead countries haven't figured out what the same thing Israel does. You got a Chinese national here, you got a Saudi national here. They're American citizens, right? But they originally came from, or they just relate, empathize with Saudi Arabia or Peru, pick a country, right? And you just get them because they can give unlimited bribes to American politicians thanks to the Supreme Court. You give them $200 million, and then they give the politicians $200 million, and then you own this country. Peru can buy America. Any country can buy America. Israel was just smart enough to do it. So, I mean, I don't hate the player, I hate the game, right? So now to your point, though, to the core of what if a foreign government was doing X, Y, or Z? But if people really had that legitimate concern and that was what was driving them, then wouldn't they be concerned about all of the pro-Israel money going to buy our actual government? Forget a company that might have access to some of your information. They have access to the entire United States government. They have been bought lock, stock, and barrel. So if you actually cared about a foreign influence, all the Russian people, right? The MSNBC and Rachel Maddow, oh, Russia's going to control us. And in 2016, they had 4 million tweets. So I had other problems with Russia and Trump, but I was like, I know they didn't coordinate because Roger Stone tried to find out information about whether the Russians had hacked into Hillary Clinton. If they were coordinating, he wouldn't have tried to find out that information, right? And then the government came in with, oh, they had 4 million, their propaganda had 4 million impressions on Twitter. I was like, that's Tuesday for me. Like, wow, big Russian interference, right? Meanwhile, Israel's pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars to buy our entire Congress. And it was like, I don't see it. I don't see it. The real problem is Russia. The real problem is China. No, bullshit. They don't mean a word of it. So but okay, even so, you say, all right, what should we do? Because China does have access to that information, we think, potentially, although the servers are actually in Texas. So, okay, then why don't we have a rule that applies evenly and fairly to all the social media companies? So if you say, hey, the owners of TikTok cannot access this or cannot use the information for that, right? Then have it apply to Facebook, have it apply to YouTube, have it apply to X. Don't tell me, no, everybody else can get your private information, do whatever the hell you like with it, but only TikTok can because I'm concerned about China. No, then do fair and even rules for everyone.
What if the fair and even rule broke along the lines of if they're a foreign company and we are in, I don't know what standing they would put it in, but I consider us to be in a Cold War with China. Mm-hmm. So I may be simply the person that is totally into that cover story. But when I heard that, I was like, ooh, that's actually interesting. I think the next 10 years are really going to be like the 80s with us and Russia. And especially given the weakness of the dollar because of all the printing, China is a pure competitor economically. They are in their own region, probably militarily stronger than we are, not globally, but in their region. So it seems to me that there is certainly reason to be thoughtful about somebody that can map everybody's face, that can influence them with an algorithm. But I'm not sure where I fall on the TikTok issue. And my whole thinking is all about the China connection. I'm not even thinking about Israel.
No, I hear you. And look, so I don't want people to get obsessed about Israel. I'm just saying this one of many factors, and it shows the hypocrisy, right? But Elon Musk can have the same access, and he is the largest donor to the president of the United States. That seems to also be a giant problem. But we say, oh, no, since he's an American, the problem disappears. It doesn't really. We're just choosing not to focus on that. We're choosing to focus on TikTok. So on China, I'm not in the same place you are. I'm a realist about China, but I don't think we have to go to a Cold War, a hot war. I don't know why we're constantly talking about the military. why don't we just have an economic battle with China? Why do we have to have a military battle with China?
Hopefully that's all it ever is. But
Yeah, I don't want like, why are we demagoguing? Why Chinese Communist Party? They're not communists. They haven't been communists in a long time, right? So they have centralized planning, but they have these giant corporations that are making tons and tons of money. Everybody's getting rich in China. Now we got a middle class. So that you throw communists in there to rile people up. Oh, they're the evil enemy and stuff. Look, no, they're looking out for their own self-interest. They're very good at looking out for their own self-interest. We have to be clear-eyed about that. And I think a lot of politicians before Trump, and this is one of the things I'll give Trump credit for, he's actually, negotiating on our behalf, and he's using our leverage, and he's pushing back. So that I like, and I've been, and I call that out on TYT as well. So if you say China comes in and goes, all right, I'm going to put these tariffs on you, and I'm going to support my industry by pouring in this much money into my industry, and then we're going to drive prices down, and then we're going to bankrupt you, and then we're going to take you over. Well, then you do exactly what they do. You mirror image. So I'm not saying don't worry about it. I'm not saying they're not a competitor. I'm not saying we shouldn't respond to their unfair practices. I'm saying, why don't we just do the same exact thing back at them without escalating, without talking about the military, without demagoguing and et cetera? Just kick their ass economically, right? And let's have a real battle. And I believe in America. I think in the long run, China's not really our top competitor at all. I think, look, maybe this makes me more of a capitalist than the average right winger or whatever. The labels aren't that important, but I believe in capitalism, and I think centralized planning in the long run is a terrible idea. In the short run, it can be spectacularly successful, as China just showed with incredible growth. In a tiny amount of time. That's what centralized planning is great at. But over time, it breeds endless corruption and endless wrong decision because you're not using the wisdom of the crowd, right? And anytime you have a gatekeeper making decisions, it's always wrong. I wrote an email to my friends in 1998 saying online video will beat television. And that at that point, online video barely existed.
That's very prescient.
And then we started Young Turks to do online video back in 2002. We were the first YouTube partner, longest running internet show. Why am I telling you that in the context of China? Because the reason I had that belief was because I knew that the gatekeepers in entertainment were not very good at their job. And that the wisdom of the crowd would always beat the gatekeepers. And what I realized is in online video, there aren't going to be gatekeepers, especially at least for a long, long time. And the wisdom of the crowd is going to elevate the best hosts, right? And give you the most compelling content. And that turned out to be true. Same thing for China versus America. Their centralized planning might do great in the beginning, but it'll fall apart and their biggest advantage will turn into their biggest disadvantage. Our actual competitor 50 years from now is India. India has enormous energy, enormous entrepreneurial spirit. It's a beautiful and disastrous chaos, right? It's got huge upsides, huge downsides within that chaotic energy in India. But India is going to rise up and be bigger than China and be our real competitor. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Talk to me about the Sig Heil heard around the world from Elon Musk. How do you read that? Goofy signal, dog whistle?
No, so I don't think he's a Nazi. I don't even think it's a dog whistle, but I do think it was intentional. I think it was trolling. It was a spectacular case of trolling. He wanted the attention. Elon has decided, and it's not necessarily an incorrect decision, that the most valuable commodity in America is attention. And that's why he massively overpaid for X, because he wanted it so bad, because he understands it has the mother lode of the commodity that he wants, attention. And so what are we talking about after the inauguration? We barely talked about the executive orders. We didn't talk about Trump's speech at all, but we are talking about what Elon did. Okay. And when you troll, you build in plausible deniability. Oh, I was touching my heart. Oh, I'm a little awkward. And so here I can prove my credibility because I've defended the right wing actors before, when like Laura Ingraham, for example, raised her arms at the RNC, and people are like, "Oh, that looks like a Nazi salute." I'm like, guys, anyone who raises their arm at any kind of angle can look like a Nazi salute. She didn't. She didn't do a Nazi salute. That wasn't even close. So in this case, though, man, he snapped that thing. I mean, that was right out of 1930s Germany. And if that was an accidental, autistic moment of exuberance, holy cow, what a coincidence that it turned into something that looks identical to the Sieg Heil Nazi salute, right? So I think what is more logical and likely is that he thought about it and he thought, if I put my heart, in fact, he does it twice if you watch the second version of the clip. So he does it to the crowd. That's the one that everybody sees. And then there's another video where he turns around to the people behind the podium and does it again. And Anna and I disagreed about this on the Young Turks, but the way that I saw it, he didn't put his hand on his heart when he did the second one. And he forgot that he was supposed to do that for his excuse. So after he appointed the second time, then he put his hand on his heart, right? And so I nitpicking in that particular part. But overall, I think it was epic trolling, not in a good way. You don't do that. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. What do you? All right, you've got enough attention. For God's sake, it's enough, right? So, but I know people get super touchy about it. Oh, and in fact, I said this online. Got attacked by both sides. Okay, why? Because the right-wing tribe says, you said Nazi. Everybody always calls us Nazis. I hate you. It's bullshit. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. He was just, oh, my heart, my warm heart. It was about, all right, guys, if you believe it, God bless your heart, okay? And then the left wing said, what do you mean he's not a Nazi? What do you mean he's just trolling? He's definitely a Nazi. You don't call him a Nazi. You're on the right wing. That's it. We knew it. You love Trump. And you're giving Elon an excuse and you're not calling him a Nazi when everybody knows he's a Nazi.
That's so interesting to me. To me, it really did just look like this super awkward guy doing like heart version of a blown kiss. I had no idea. Like I watched it, didn't even make my radar, had no idea. And then the next day saw the hullabaloo about it. Very, very fascinating. Our frame of reference controls not only what we look at, but what we see.
Yeah. Tom, I'll say one last thing about that. No one actually knows. Right. The only person who knows is Elon.
True.
So if you say, and I got into this debate on Piers this morning, if you say, hey, Cenk, you're reading his mind, but you're also reading his mind.
No, 100%.
Right. You're reading, and I'm not saying you in particular, I'm saying the people who think he wasn't doing it on purpose.
I am for sure.
Yeah. They're saying, I assume he had good intent. I assume he didn't mean to do it to get attention. And I'm assuming he did it to get attention, but we're both assuming. We don't know. We're just going based on our experience, our perspective, and what it looked like to us.
No doubt. Tomorrow, the president is going to get a briefing from the CIA on his desk. What should be in that briefing?
That's a great question. It's going to be a different briefing than it was yesterday, which is, it goes without saying, but at the same time, what we're